Mrs. Jeepers stood in front of her class. It was almost lunchtime, and the third graders at Bailey Elementary had been working hard all morning. Eddie looked at Mrs. Jeepers and wondered how many more math problems she was going to make them do. There was something strange about Eddie's teacher. Everybody thought so. She had a way of flashing her green eyes and rubbing the mysterious brooch she always wore until the kids paid attention. Even Eddie. Most of the kids thought she was a vampire, but nobody wanted to find out for sure. Mrs. Jeepers cleared her throat before talking in her strange Transylvanian accent. "Please, put your pencils down. We must take a brief rest from work today." Melody stared at Mrs. Jeepers, and Liza gasped, but Eddie grinned and smacked his pencil down on his desk. Ever since becoming their teacher, Mrs. Jeepers had kept them busy copying math problems and rewriting sentences until their pencils were nothing but stubs. Eddie waved his hand high above his head. "Do we get an extra recess?" he asked. A few kids clapped, but they stopped in a hurry when Mrs. Jeepers flashed her green eyes in their direction. "There will be no extra recess," she said quietly. "We will stop working, so you may have your eyes examined." Mrs. Jeepers ignored Eddie when he groaned. Instead, she picked up a long white stick of chalk that was nearly the same color as her pale fingers. When she wrote on the board, the chalk squeaked, sending goosebumps up all the third graders' backs. "This is the name of the ophthalmologist," she said. "That's who I ran into this morning," Melody said. "Dr. Polly is here to look at your eyes," Mrs. Jeepers added. "I am sure you will all be very polite to him. After all, he is a guest in our school." Eddie slid down in his seat and frowned. "I don't need to have my eyes examined," he mumbled, "especially by a sissy doctor." Howie shook his head and spoke so softly, Eddie barely heard him. "Dr. Polly is no sissy. I have a feeling we'd better beware of Dr. Polly."